She's no longer minister. Does that mean that she escapes the parliamentary accounting processes?
That shouldn't be, because we're yet to understand whether she's still a member of parliament or not.
She's not the only minister that you were concerned about or concerned with. Where does that leave the Human Settlements Minister, whose budget you did not support? And where does that leave Senzo Mchunu?
The posture remains. This wasn't a solely a Nkabane fight. It is a Thembisi Melane fight equally too. We made it clear that we don't want compromised ministers. And that's why
Guys, so finally, President Ramaphosa has decided to fire Minister Nkabane. But I think she's still a member of parliament anyway. So sometimes it feels as though it almost feels as though it's a reshuffling, but nonetheless, at least this is a kind of like a precedence, and this shows the importance of being an active citizen. All right, so like you saw in the video yesterday I made when Helen Zilla, actually I've been asked by a friend of mine to not to pronounce the Iron Lady's name as Zille but Zilla, and so I've learned that. So Helen Zilla actually said yesterday that they wouldn't take the crime of what she calls allegedly fraud by members of the ANC lying down. All right, so in other words, lying to parliament, misleading parliament, just like many DA members have argued both Mchunu and Nobuhle Nkabane actually have done, and also maybe Thembisi Melane at some point, who they also are trying to pursue to kick out of leadership. So this morning we woke up to see that President Ramaphosa has fired Nobuhle Nkabane for many of the allegations, according to the DA, that go along the lines of fraud. All right, and so Karabo Kakao in this video is actually explaining to us the reasons and the circumstances behind that firing. And actually, I really also would like to give credit to the EFF. I know the EFF is not a palatable party on most of the subscribers on this channel, but we must give credit to whom credit is due. So there's this guy from the EFF party. I think it's part of the renewal of the EFF, a really sharp, representatives of the EFF who actually are on taking the bull by the jugular in demanding accountability. And for me, that's the most important, because it's not really enough to simply castigate, the parliament or probably the government of South Africa for being along the lines of white monopoly capital and all of that. But there has to be a strong, firm stance of demanding accountability from leaders and leadership in South Africa when they go astray, so to speak. So we must give credence also to this guy, Lonzi, who actually got into a fight in parliament with the Speaker of the House at the time when he was asking this very higher education minister and the SETA boards really potent, pertinent questions, to the point where bodyguards were sent into the parliament to kick him out. All right, so we shouldn't take for granted his own contribution to the circumstances that have led to the firing of Nobuhle Nkabane. I'll be playing a short video for us to also listen to his perspective. But one of the things that Karabo Kakao is actually helping us understand is that the Minister of Education was audacious enough to lie to the parliament, which is something that the DA decided that they wouldn't take no matter what. All right. Now, there was also a really interesting question along this interview. I really enjoyed this question so much, which was to the effect that now that Minister Nobuhle Nkabane has been fired, would the DA be appeased? Is this sort of like an appeasement for the firing of Andrew Whitfield, which was a DA assistant minister? And Karabo Kakao makes it clear that this is not really necessarily about appeasing appeasing the DA because of a certain firing or certain action taken against one person or the other, but it's about the fight for accountability. And for me on Kwazemi here, this is what is most important. It is about how is it that our government can be held accountable to the highest of the highest, to the highest ideals of public service, to the point where public service would be seen not necessarily as a cash cow, but as a really, benign, dignified role of serving the public. All right, Karabo Kakao argues that the level of distrust in South Africa has gone off the roofs, is almost on steroids, and people are not able to trust whatever it is that government officials even say. If they say they're going to build a road tomorrow, even if they go to that road and start constructing that road, the people do not trust that the workers on that road are from the government. It's so bad. It's that bad. All right. And so that's where, there's a lot of hard work to do in South Africa. And that's why I usually tell you guys that, the DA has a really important role to play in South Africa, regardless of how you see it, regardless of how you see that party. And that's why most times when you see me trying to really understand and learn about the policies of the DA, these are the reasons, because I see them, that role that they usually played as an opposition, even though it's a benign opposition. And also from those of us watching from West Africa, it's really interesting because we are seeing what many would have called a white opposition in an African leadership, which makes South Africa really interesting. But the most important part of the DA's role in South Africa, I still remain and I will still argue, is on this fight for clean governance. The moment the DA can stand on that path and try to eradicate anything that stinks of racialism, racism, segregation, and all of that, the DA will rise to the point where we might even have a DA presidency in South Africa. And for me personally, I will favor that as long as we see a non-racial, clean, responsible, accountable government in South Africa. So for me, that's what I stand for. But let's quickly listen to this Lonzi, this EFF guy. His name is, I really try to get his name so we're able to really understand, the reason and how he sees this replacement of this minister. Before I play the video of Karabo Cacao breaking down what she sees, as the trajectory. And I think I would advise you guys to listen to that interview today. Let's quickly listen to Lonzi as he tries to articulate what the changing of this old minister to this new minister means for him, especially being one of the proponents of this fight against this minister.
And do you believe Buti Manamela then, as the new higher education minister, is the right person to basically turn the ship around?
Look, I wouldn't want to praise him too early. It's a very difficult department. And of course, he's an ANC comrade, by the way, anyways. The choice is going to be his. When we were speaking to the minister in the budget vote, we said to the minister, all of these ANC comrades that are encouraging you to continue the corruption and looting in higher education are not going to be there when you are removed. You are going to fall alone on your own sword. So that is the warning that we're giving Buti as well. If he's coming with the mindset of wanting to loot, of wanting to entrench kleptocracy, wanting to entrench cadre deployment, wanting to enrich the entrepreneurs in the sector, I can tell you now he is also not going to last 6 months. Again, because our fight is not personal. The individuals are not important to us. What is important is that whoever is given the work and the mandate to serve the students and youth of South Africa is doing so correctly. And where they mess up, whether it's Buti, whether it's Nkabane, whether they are a doctor, whether they are not a doctor, we're going to hold them accountable.
And on Dr. Nkabane, just lastly, she will remain, if I'm correct, a member of parliament. Do you think she should give up that seat or be made to give it up?
Look, she's undergoing a process, I think, on ethics. Some MPs have also opened a case against her for allegedly lying. Those must continue. So that must continue. The work of ethics must still do its job because we still need to find. Remember, we want to also set the tone for other ministers because ministers must start to take the work of parliament seriously. So we have to follow up to its logical conclusion, even though there's a new minister and we'll be continuing to do the work of the sector. But we ought to send a very strong message to all of these ministers that you're not just going to continue with impunity. You're not just going to continue with arrogance. You can't just come to parliament and lie or mislead and do all of those things and nothing is done about that. So this is a strong message that we're sending right across the board from the lowest deputy minister even to the presidency itself to say even President Cyril Ramaphosa, parliament must be able to hold him accountable. There is no one who is going to be above the rule of law in South Africa.
Yeah, so you can hear it from yourself. This is the guy who he was kicked out of parliament. He was bungled out by bodyguards because he was asking questions. I think one of those questions he was even asking was, I think Gwedeman Tashe was asking a question on why the son of Gwedeman Tashe was involved in one of, I don't know if it's one of these education boards anyway, but it was along those lines to the point where he was asked not to ask those kind of questions. And the moment he kept asking, demanding for accountability, he was kicked out by bodyguards and all of that. So I think he's a really interesting personality that shouldn't just be shrugged off because of the fact that he's from the EFF. But, you know, his fight for accountability as well has contributed to President Ramaphosa pushing that Nobuhle Nkabane as higher education minister be fired in the height and in the wake of these really damning allegations of corruption and, this cadre deployment that has actually been alleged that she put cadres on the board of SETAs, whereas she should have found people who were capable of working or examples of meritocracy. But now let's quickly listen to Karabo Kakao, break down what the DA will be going forward, that even though Nkabane has been fired, the DA still has some steps. It still has open cases. It still has, a mission, a vision on how he sees that ministry to be cleaned out and what the DA will be going forward in its exposition of corruption in the government, especially members of parliament, and share your thoughts in the comments.
Are you surprised by this move?
Look, it was about time. It had been a very long time since the people of this country had been asking to President Ramaphosa for Minister Nkabane to be fired. And we are happy that this has happened, but this is not a DA victory. It's not a Karabo Kakao victory. It is a victory for the people of the Republic of South Africa who depend on a clean government, who depend on ministers who are free from corruptions, who are detoxed from the effect of lying perpetually to cover messes that they create at the expense of the people's coffers and ultimately the dreams of the people of this country. When the Democratic Alliance campaigned in 2024 to come back to Parliament, we asked the people of South Africa to give us an opportunity to fight against corruption. And this is what has been delivered here. We promised the people of South Africa that ours is to rescue South Africa. Rescuing South Africa means fighting as hard as we can to root out corruption amongst the ranks of the ANC within cabinet. Nobuhle Nkabane is not the caliber of a minister that the people of this country ever deserved to have. She has lied to Parliament, effectively committing fraud and a statutory offence under Section 27 of the Powers, Privileges and Immunities of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act 4 of 2004. And that's why, beyond our call to the president to fire her, we've opened a case that is now being investigated by the Hawks, which too must come to a closing chapter. We have a precedent of Tony Yengeni. She must follow the same line. It cannot be that in democratic South Africa in 2025, people think they can come to Parliament, earn salaries that are paid for by the monies of the people of South Africa via tax, and be audacious enough to come to Parliament and lie, not only about the work that they're doing there, but the impact that it has.
Yeah.
SETAs play an important role in uplifting and upskilling young people in this country, many of whom are sitting at home hopeless, unable to put food on the table for themselves and their families. And the DA's fight here was directly linked at making sure that we detox SETAs from cadre deployment, we detox them from patronage. We detox them for them being a cash cow for cadres to enjoy, while young people are still left unskilled in our streets, are still left with outside of locked out of opportunities for jobs.
Yeah.
So we're saying as the Democratic Alliance here, this is a victory for the people of South Africa. Thank you, South Africa, for the mandate that you've given the DA to fight here, and we'll continue to do more.
She's no longer minister. Does that mean that she escapes the parliamentary accounting processes?
That shouldn't be, because we're yet to understand whether she's still a member of parliament or not. Obviously, the ethics process thereof does not escape the fact that that process must still be followed and concluded. But also, just because she's no longer a member of parliament, it doesn't mean that parliament ceases to do its job to make sure that it holds every South African accountable for how they've spent public money. So she may have spent it until a few minutes ago, but it doesn't mean that moving forward, we're not interested in getting to the bottom of it and making sure that she pays for the part that she has played so far.
She's not the only minister that you have openly said that you are against, and as a result, you were not going to pass the budget for higher education and training. Where does that leave the Democratic Alliance now? Will you pass the budget around higher education and training?
The party leadership,
will you support it, rather?
Yes, so the party leadership is yet to take a decision right now on the steer there on what we are doing. Once the leadership has decided what the next tune is going to be, we'll be able to communicate that.
And I mentioned that she's not the only minister that you were concerned about or concerned with. Where does that leave the Human Settlements Minister, whose budget you did not support, and where does that leave Senzo Mchunu?
The posture remains. This wasn't a solely a Nkabane fight. It is a Thembisi Melane fight equally too. We made it clear that we don't want compromised ministers. And that's why in what my sentiments earlier, what I've said is we will continue to fight harder to make sure that we detox cabinet of corrupt and compromised ministers. So just because Nkabane is gone, it doesn't mean the fight is over. We still want to see Melane gone. We still want to make sure that the likes of Senzo Mchunu get to account for their part that they've played in compromising the integrity of not only cabinet, but also the security of this country, but also making sure that we're able to bring hope to the people of South Africa. The level of distrust that rests amongst our people as far as the role that parliament and government is supposed to play in giving them service delivery, but in spending their money wisely, is too low for us to stop right now. We need to be able to get South Africa back to a place where hope is the order of the day, where people trust their government to deliver on their services, where people trust their government to spend their money wisely, where people trust their government to take decisions that are in their best interests. And until we get there, we are not done fighting.
Yeah. I'm trying to get the clear position of the DA around Senzo Mchunu. So you went and opened a case against him. Would you like him to go immediately, or you still want him subjected to the Commission of Inquiry, whose start is imminent, if we could put it that way?
So it is important to make sure that we have an investigation process that is thorough to get to understand the veracity of the allegations laid against him. You would have noted that in Nkabane's case, that we called for her firing immediately after we have exhausted the means internally to get our proof in the pudding of what exactly her involvement was. We can confidently say today that Nobuhle Nkabane misled Parliament, that she lied, that she committed fraud and a statutory offence, because we have done the investigative work there in Parliament and in committee to do so. That must also still be able to follow course for all other ministers. But the bottom line is that, as the Democratic Alliance, is that we will not sit back and watch this beautiful Republic of South Africa that we have today because of blood that was shed to get us to the point that we are right now. We will not rest until that blood rests in peace, until the graves of our forefathers are able to smile and look back on this country and see the sun rise and shine better onto South Africa, because there would have been hope, because the deaths of the forefathers of democracy would have meant something, that we would have a Republic of South Africa where public servants are exactly that, where they're not liars, where they do not manipulate the people of South Africa, where they deliver services, where the decisions that they take consider what matters most for the people of this country, and where they uphold the Constitution of the Republic, its laws, and they conduct themselves with the necessary dignity that the people of this country need.
Some may be wondering tonight whether President Ramaphosa has gone some distance in appeasing the Democratic Alliance, given his firing of the Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Andrew Whitfield. Has this appeased the DA?
No, that's not an appeasal, because look, the DA's position remains the same. It hasn't moved. You firing one of our own doesn't mean we're going to now rest and be grateful that at least you fired yours. The bottom line is cabinet still has a lot of compromised people, i.e. Thembisi Melane, who we still also want to see her fired for her involvement in the VBS scandal. We still want to be able to see the Palabora ruling given effect to Nkabane. We still want to be able to make sure that when the people of this country look at the cabinet, they don't pick between the DA's cleanliness and the ANC's messiness in integrity and profiles, that they have a clean government altogether. So for as long as we still have compromised ministers in cabinet, i.e. Thembisi Melane, we will never be happy.
The question around the two new ministers, or let me say the new minister of Higher Education and his deputy. Your thoughts around their two characters? Are these people that you're comfortable with?
So look, the bottom line is that Buti Manamela has been there for a very long time within the sector. This is somebody who has operated in the sector for a while. But we're yet to see whether his operation in the sector means he's clean. We know how the ANC operates. We're yet to see whether he can be a better leader than Nobuhle Nkabane, whether he is allergic to lying and not pro-lying as Nobuhle was. But ultimately, we want to see a better sector. Young people across institutions of higher learning, whether university and TVET colleges, deserve a NSFAS that's going to pay for their allowances in time. They deserve a student accommodation system that works for them, where they can have good quality education, where they are safe, where they can study with freedom of opportunities to succeed altogether. Equally, we want to be able to see a SETA space that is detoxed of cadre deployment and corruption there, where the skilling of young people outside of formal institutions of higher learning is able to be maximized. We want to be able to make sure that we transform the sector altogether for it to have meaning, to add meaning to what education for this country, as far as tertiary education is concerned, is supposed to be. Yeah. We also want to see the CET sector being the community education and training institutions within our country being prioritized, and also the infrastructure thereof giving hope and meaning to young people who have been locked out of the system. So this is what we will be testing Buti Manamela against, whether or not higher education becomes the pride and joy of this country, or whether he plunges it deeper into a bigger mess than it is right now. That's when we will be able to tell you whether he's good for the job or not. Until he proves himself, we're yet to see.
Quick throwaway question before I let you go. Buti Manamela's deputy is Dr. Nomusa Dube Ncube, and she was mentioned among those who would be chairing the SETA boards, the now controversial SETA board chairpersons. Might you be tempted to ask her who offered her the job in the first place?
That is certainly a question to ask. We want to know this, and we want to know now. But also it brings in another question here, Abdikali, which is very important, that has the ANC looked at itself and transformed itself? Not only was Nobuhle not only is Meng Ncube a former premier, but there was an attempt to recycle her into the system via the SETAs. That didn't work. Now we are back channeling her as a deputy minister. Is the ANC that enable to find somebody outside of the already existing pool of rejected politicians within their ranks or not? And the fact that they have her there makes the answer to plausibly be yes, that they don't have a healthy pool altogether. And that's why this is a moment for the people of South Africa to look outside of the ANC for confidence, to look to parties like the Democratic Alliance that continuously show that when we are given an opportunity to fight for the people of this country, that we do so earnestly, like we did here with the fight with Nkabane, that we, together with the people of South Africa, will continuously fight for what is right, to fight against corruption, to make sure that we do not recycle failed leaders to now and expect them to reinvent a system that they have previously shown us to be incapable of leading and correcting.
Karabo, thank you very much for